It is getting close to that time, of 7 p.m. Kind of missed everybody, to be honest. Everyone had a good summer. Yep. And it's 7 o'clock. So let's get it going. Welcome to this meeting of the Wooddale Community Development Commission. My name is Jamie Ochoa. I am the chairman for this committee. Ms. Secretary, can you please do roll call?
Mr. Woods.
Here.
Ms. Zadko.
Here.
Mr. Peterson.
Here.
Mr. Parenti.
Here.
Ms. Rudnicki.
Here.
Mr. Babowis.
Here.
And Chairman Ochoa.
Here. Okay, CDC has a quorum present. With that, we'll move on to business items. We need a motion to approve the meeting minutes from July 17, 2023.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
There being a motion and a second, all in favor signify by saying yes.
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 All those opposed signify by stating no. Motion carries. The minutes are approved. Moving on to our public hearings, Mr. Conway, as chairman, I request that you serve as the public hearing facilitator.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. Okay, for our public hearings, all testimony will be given under oath. At the hearing, there'll be an opportunity for the public to offer testimony and to comment. Following the public hearing, the CDC's deliberations will be open to the public in the sense that are all invited to listen and to watch. The public, however, may not speak during the CDC's deliberations. We ask that the applicant here tonight give specific evidence to demonstrate that the proposal meets the standards of approval for the request. The burden is on the applicant to prove the case. Additionally, city staff will provide a general description of the proposal followed by their analysis. With respect to others who wish to speak, you may give an opinion or present specific evidence as to why you believe the applicant meets or fails to meet the standards for the request. Finally, we will strictly adhere to the schedule prepared for tonight's meeting. However, those wishing to submit evidence and testimony will be afforded sufficient time within which to do so. Whether you're a member of the public wishing to make a statement for the record or a witness testifying on behalf of an applicant, you will be placed under oath, and then you'll begin by stating your name and address. You'll be subject to the questions by the CDC and potential cross-examination by the applicant. To allow as many people as possible to be heard, we request that you limit your remarks to 5 minutes. If additional time is needed, the hearing may be continued until the next available hearing date. Okay, I'll call tonight's first and only matter on the schedule. It is CDC 2023-006. This case involves an application for a special use for a planned unit development with certain deviations, a variation, a site plan review, and a lot consolidation to enable the construction of a new industrial building and surface parking at 895 North Wooddale Road. 895 Wooddale LLC is the current property owner. Staff, can you please indicate when notice of hearing was published and whether you have the certificate of publication from the newspaper?
Would you raise your right hand and state your name, please?
Gosha Mocheha.
And your address.
404 North Wooddale Road, Wooddale, Illinois.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Thank you. Yes, the notice of this public hearing was published in Daily Herald on September 29th. We do have a copy of the certificate of publication on file. On the same day, a sign was also placed at the subject property, and we mailed out notices to property owners within 250 feet of the subject property.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. The applicant is here tonight, and so we'll give the floor to the applicant to make the presentation.
And would you raise your right hand and state your name and address, please?
Hi, my name is Marshall Subach, S-U-B-A-C-H, and I have an office at 1035 South York Road in Bensonville.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do, Mrs. Chapetta.
Thank you, Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, for the record, my name is Marshall Subach. I represent the petitioner, who is 895 North Wooddale Road, LLC. With me tonight is Mark Dudek, who is the project manager for the Wooddale, for the petitioner. Also is Cliff Toverman, who is the civil engineer and traffic expert. Also have Gio Chacho, right? Who's representing the petitioner and Gullo International. Mary Ann Gullo, who's been with here before at other meetings, she is out of the country today for the next month on a Sister Cities charity event, so she could not be here. But we do have representatives from the owners here. We're seeking approval, as Sean said, for the PUD for the redevelopment of the property at 895 North Wooddale Road. Properties at Wooddale Road and I-390. Some of us still call it Thorndale Avenue, right? It's 7.86 acres, and it's within the Thorndale Intersection Overlay District, or the TIO, with the underlying zoning being C2. The current development is for truck and trailer parking of about 184 truck and trailer spaces, and the current development also has an open detention basin. The new development will be a 86,400 square foot industrial building. The building will be able to handle manufacturing, distribution, office, warehouse, and logistics. We don't know who the tenant or tenants will be at this time, but it will be a great addition to the Wooddale Industrial Park. The building is was designed to kind of be a showpiece for entering Wooddale into the industrial district off of I-390. Because the building is being built on speculation, without a tenant in hand, the building has been designed to allowing for as much flexibility as possible in order to get as high of quality tenant or tenants as possible. The new development will have underground stormwater detention, which will take away from the current stormwater detention, which sometimes ends up being kind of a maintenance nightmare, being right along the 390. You can guess people driving by throwing garbage in there. So that's going to be eliminated, which will be a positive on the aesthetics. The new development will have 113 parking spaces for parking of passenger cars, 24 loading docks. There'll be 50 truck parking spaces and 5 tractor-only parking spaces in the rear of the property, as Scotia's showing you the site plan right now. With the new development, we'll be requesting from DuPage County approval for a curb cut along Wooddale Road to allow for passenger cars only, not trucks, to do a right in and right out along Wooddale Road. There's also going to be a new driveway installed along the frontage road that's not there currently, which will allow on the north side to allow trucks to enter and leave the site without going on Wooddale Road. The building was designed to have the truck parking and loading docks in the rear so that it would not be seen from Wooddale Road, and to back up to the other loading and truck areas for the property to the east, which I believe is Magic Chef. The plan also includes precast screening to screen the truck and trailer parking on the rear of the property. The truck parking will be limited to tenants only, so there'll be no leasing of the truck spaces. The only ones who will be able to use the truck parking will be tenants that occupy the space. The offices in the building are along Wooddale Road, closest to the corresponding passenger car parking along Wooddale Road as well. There'll be new sidewalks installed on the north, south, and west sides to allow for safe pedestrian traffic. And there'll also be a bike path or bike rack installed for those employees that work there that want to ride their bikes to work. And if you think about it, that can go beyond just residents of Wooddale that work there. You could have somebody who takes the train in and theoretically ride their bike from the train station to their job and then ride their bike back to the train station. So these are all new parts of the UDO that this board has passed, and this plan implements all of those features. All the landscaping will meet the current code requirements. The landscaping plan has 1 of the 30 existing trees in the property that will need to be removed. There will be 57 shade trees, 23 ornamental trees, and 34 evergreens installed on the space. The proposed plan is consistent with the Wooddale Comprehensive Plan as adopted by this board and the Wooddale City Council. As part of the development, we are seeking 1 variance and 3 deviations. This UDO is very new, as you know. This board did actually a very good job going through those, and actually gave the comments that you guys made for that UDO really gave an opportunity to the City Council to look at and revise what needed to be revised. I never thanked you guys for all the work you put into adopting that. The variances that we are seeking, 1 is that the minimum for a PUD is 10 acres. This site is 7.86 acres, so that's the first variation that we're seeking is for that lower square footage. Again, this is just because that we don't have 10 acres and there's no space available from adjoining property owners that we could purchase to make it 10 acres. The second deviation that we're asking for is for allowing parking of passenger vehicles along the front yard, which you can see is right here along Wooddale Road. That again is we want to have the parking to be as close as possible to the office spaces, which would be in the front of the building and away from the truck parking, which is going to be in the rear. The other deviation that we're seeking is to allow for parking of passenger vehicles in the area that's between the front of the building and the front property line, which is again that same area. The other deviation is that for this, assuming DuPage County approves it, across the street, the hotel has a curb cut that they have. It's a curb cut to nowhere right now because they never put the driveway in. They got approval for the curb cut, but they haven't installed the driveway yet. Someday they may. So the deviation that we're asking for is that those driveways either have to line up with each other or they can't be more than 150 feet. Is that right? Minimum 150 feet. So we're asking for a deviation of that because we want our curb cut that we are going to utilize, assuming DuPage County approves it, to be in the center of our property, away from Thorndale or I-90, and to give us the most flexibility as far as the free movement of traffic on our site. So that's the last deviation that we are seeking. In order to approve a PUD, there's certain standards that we have to meet, which are provided for in the Exhibit A that I provided to staff, as well as staff's memorandum that they provided you. I'll briefly touch on these. The first standard is whether or not the PUD will be in harmony with the UDO and the comprehensive plan. And as submitted in the memorandum and the letter, it does meet the zoning requirements for the industrial use as a permitted use under the UDO. And the plan meets numerous goals of the comprehensive plan, which includes seeking economic development, job opportunities for residents in Wooddale to work within the same town that they live, and encourage redevelopment to increase that tax base to lower the tax burden on the residents. So we meet 3 of the goals in the comprehensive plan. The next factor to consider is whether or not there's going to be adverse impact on the surrounding properties. There's already industrial properties around this, and then the commercial property that I mentioned for the hotel across the street. The next factor is whether or not it's going to interfere with the surrounding properties' development or redevelopment, and our plan will not do that. In fact, because we're asking for the deviation on the driveway, it doesn't stop the hotel from installing their driveway once they get around to doing that. So we meet that requirement as well. The next is whether or not there's adequate public facilities. This plan does not unduly strain any public facilities. All the necessary infrastructure, including the underground detention, will be installed by the developer. As far as traffic congestion, we did submit a traffic memorandum that if you have any questions, I can have Mr. Toberman comment on that. But we're going from 180 parking spaces for truck traffic down to 50 plus the extra 5. So there's going to be a natural reduction in the amount of truck traffic because there's less trucks on there. We don't know who the users are going to be quite yet, but the positive is right now, this is a private drive. So right now, all the trucks that go in and out of that site enter that private drive, which I believe doesn't really have a name, but everybody calls it Hanson Court? Unofficially Hanson Court. So, so right now, that's where all the truck traffic goes and leaves. Now with this new revised plan, we'll still have the access here. We'll have the truck or the car parking to exit Wooddale Road. And then what's really great is up to the north, you're going to have a new driveway installed onto the frontage road. So cars going eastbound will be able to enter the site from the new driveway, and the trucks will also be able to exit the site. So the truck traffic on Wooddale Road naturally should be a lot less because there's less parking spaces, and we're adding these new ingress and egress places, especially along the north side there. So traffic should go down as far as problems on Wooddale Road. The next factor is whether or not there will be destruction of any significant features. Minimum on the tree, 1 removal, all the additional landscaping that's going to be added. I wouldn't call the open air detention basin a significant, actually by going underground, that's more expensive, but it's going to be better maintenance-wise long-term and look aesthetically much more pleasing. The next factor is whether or not we're meeting the standards of the UDO, and it does meet all the standards other than the 1 variance on the lot size and the 3 deviations with regard to parking and the driveway along Wooddale Road that we're asking. The next factor to consider is whether or not there's a public benefit. And again, this plan was designed, I have to say, Gosha worked tirelessly with staff, with the petitioner, making suggestions on the building. So did Stacy, trying to make this as least amount of impact on the surrounding buildings and as much of a positive for the city of Wooddale. So again, I thank staff for all their efforts, but the way this has been designed, and it just didn't happen overnight. You can see Mark's book there. They've been working on this for months and months with drawing different things and getting staff's feedback. So there is very minimal adverse impact on the surrounding properties, and the public benefit is there as well. And that takes care of factors number 8 and 9. The next one are the PUD standards. A lot of these don't apply, but I'll still go through them. One is that there's unified ownership. Again, we're asking for a lot consolidation. There's 1 owner of the property. It's 895 North Wooddale LLC, and it will continue as 1 owner with the lots of record being consolidated. The next factor for the PUD standards is that the variance we're seeking is a minimum variance, and that is accurate because, again, it's a 10-acre site requirement under the PUD that was adopted for the UDO. We're at 7.68 acres. Next is whether or not there's going to be any required covenants and restrictions, and there will not be as part of this. Next is the public open space and contributions. As part of this development, there will be a new sidewalk that will be installed. That's a public sidewalk that's going to connect to the existing sidewalk. So again, we're getting more pedestrian friendly at all times and also more bike friendly with the sidewalk. Next factor is the common open space. That doesn't apply to this. The landscaping, you can see from the site plan, there's extensive landscaping being added to it, and we're going to meet all the code requirements with respect to landscaping. And then the private street, also known as Hanson Court now, is going to stay the same, and there's an access agreement with the property to the east that doesn't change, that does not change. They still have obviously access to their property, so nothing that approving this doesn't change that at all. As far as utilities, which is the next factor, all the utilities, including the detention, will be underground, and then the additional standards for the PUD approval do not apply to this development. As for the variation, there are certain standards that we have to provide evidence for. Again, this is in the Exhibit A of my correspondence that I provided. One is to show an undue hardship, and the undue hardship is that when they bought this lot, it was always 7.83 or 7.68 acres. It was never 10 acres. The 10 acre standard came in afterwards. So that's the first hardship. The next is the unique physical condition of the property. This requirement was not, or this being short on the square footage was not something caused by the petitioner. They didn't sell part of their lot. This is the whole lot that they bought. And now when you have Wooddale Road on one side and 390 on the other side, there's nowhere else to go as far as buying additional property. The next factor is whether or not it was self-created, and again, it was not the request for the variance. The next factor for the variance is whether or not, if you don't adopt it, will they be denied a substantial right? And they will be denied a substantial right if the variance is not granted, because they won't be able to develop this property. If they're not able to develop the property or really redevelop it, we're going to have the same development that there's now, and this is considered a higher and better use of this property. Higher tax value, higher assessed value, more taxes for the city, lower burden on the residents. The next factor is whether or not approving the variance would just be a special privilege. And the requested variance from the 10 acres to the 7.68, that's going to be a common variance you're going to see throughout this, because I think you were probably told, or it was discussed, that when the consultants for the UDO came up with a 10-acre minimum, that there were going to be a lot of substandard lots that were going to be as a result of that. And so this is just the first one that you're seeing for that. The next factor is whether or not it's consistent with the code and purpose. Again, granting the approval or the variance is consistent with the UDO and the comprehensive plan that says this property should be industrial as it's going to be developed. It's, the next factor is whether or not it's the essential and the character of the area, which again, it's the parking that we have provided for along Wooddale Road is consistent with other properties you see in the TIO district along Wooddale Road for parking in the front, and it makes sense that it's closest to the office space, and also again that you're going to see other variances requested based upon the lot size. And the last factor is whether or not there's any other remedies, and there are no other remedies. This building, we can't create more land with just a standard that we're not able to meet. As far as site plan reviews, I'm going to rest on staff's memo for those, as well as my Exhibit A for those factors, and not bore you anymore. Staff recommends approval. Staff's recommendation had 8 conditions. I went over those conditions with the petitioner. We are in agreement with those conditions. I think some of them have already been addressed with some of the updated materials. I just don't know if those made it to your packet yet, but we're in agreement with those conditions. We're asking for approval of the special use for the PUD and the variations, and the one variation and the 3 deviations, also for the lot consolidation. We do have samples. The precast is 25 pounds, so if you want me to carry it, I'm going to skip Mrs. Geppetta, and we'll go to April. If you guys want me to pass this down, I certainly can. There's the color scheme, that is the site plan, and there's also some other materials there of what the building materials will be used. And with that, I'm here to answer any questions, and thank you for all your time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Subak. Does any member of the CDC have a question for the applicant?
I guess I'll start.
Yep.
Going to the retention. How many cubic feet of water does the existing retention hold?
Mr. Tobin, do you know this? You can step up here.
Yeah. So what we'll do is anybody else who's going to provide testimony will swear you in. Okay.
Oh, sure.
Will each of you raise your right hand and state your name and address?
My name is Cliff Toberman. Address is 115 South Wilkie Road, Arlington Heights.
Thank you.
Mark Dudek, 1100 Landmeyer Road, Elk Grove Village.
And do each of you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
I do.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sure enough. You know what? I don't, it was probably written in one of the comments, responses, but I could say this much. The underground storage is designed for an 8.5-inch Bolton 75 storm event, which is larger than the prior design from 2000. Oh boy, it was 2014 or 15, the prior storage for the basin, which would have been for a 7.5-inch 100-year storm event. So all things equal, it'd be about 15% larger storage volume with all things equal.
But is it larger than what is there?
That is correct.
Okay.
Footprint, storage-wise, purely storage. I mean, it's a rectangular vault, right, in 2 locations, actually. And the large one, though, is predominant up at the northeast as you come in off that right in, right out. All along the east rear is the large vault.
So what you're saying is your underground storage is going to hold more water than what it can hold right now?
Yes, that is true.
That's
Per
what I
standards, everybody lately is the 8.5-inch rain versus the 7.5 from, 5-6 years ago. For a 24-hour event, that's 8.5-inch for 24-hour events.
15% bigger.
That's what I was looking for.
That's why he's a PE. So yeah, 15% bigger.
All right, this question, I don't know, does anybody else have a question?
Go ahead.
You were discussing traffic and how traffic is going to be lighter because less trucks. But I'm not really seeing that because The trucks that are there now pull in, park, and they're done. We're talking about a business, or that we don't know yet. So
Right.
maybe it will be less, maybe it will be more. If you have a truck that's coming in to a dock door 8 times a day, and you have all sorts of trucks doing that, you could have a lot more traffic. So I guess my question's gonna be, is there any way we can make sure that truck traffic isn't hitting Wooddale Road heading southbound? So that we send everything to 390?
So you are right in the sense that a lot of this is speculation, right? And as far as, depends on the business. There might be somebody in there that has no trucks.
Correct.
So I can't, we can't commit to saying that there's gonna be no trucks going on to Wooddale Road, because if a truck needs to go, that's the only exit to go southbound on Wooddale Road. We can't have the site have only be access to the frontage. But Cliff, yeah, you can jump in.
So, you know, the existing count, which is, it's really remarkable, actually, when you did the count of the existing traffic, you know, close to everything in the morning headed north. So we're, you know, it's unusual. It's actually unusual to see any site you count to have such a dominance of direction of traffic. So it's going north, right? Trucks are 90-some% are heading north on Wooddale Road. In the afternoon, there were 3 coming in from the southbound, heading northbound. I'm sorry, coming from the northbound lanes of Wooddale, making rights in. So most of the traffic was coming, all the trucks are coming southbound on Wooddale and making those lefts off of Hanson coming in. Dominating, completely domination in that regard. So I wouldn't guess that it's not going to change. And here's why. I've done other truck counts too for different terminal buildings. But boy, having that nearby interstate, it's all day. Everybody wants to use that interstate. You know, 80% is not. I've seen it on another truck terminal with surprisingly the same thing, surprisingly. And that's the truck driver and how they set their routes is what it comes down to in a lot of cases. But boy, that time is of the essence. But I can't, I can't mention having a warehousing or facility. You're right. There is some accommodation for multiple truck use, and it is hard to predict. And however, interestingly enough, looking at the Traffic Institute studies, surprisingly, it's not as much as you think of that multiple use. When you look at their numbers, it suggests that you look a little bit more than the number of docks, and that's not too far off, those numbers. Surprisingly, I would think like you too, actually. But the other studies for the the Institute of Traffic Engineers, sort of their data, I looked at different sources, different types of data for truck, and I don't know, they, when the trucks come in, and one other thing I want to add too, is that in our truck studies for other facilities, it's a lot of distribution of those trips. So at the peak hours that you're always worried about, AM, PM peak hours, 7:30 to 8:30 in the morning, 4:30 to 5:30 in the afternoon, the truck, they'll come in, they'll get their trucks ready, but maybe they'll go out at 10 o'clock, 9:30, 10. So we were scratching our heads on a couple studies going, how come they're not doing more peak hour trips? And well, they're busy getting trucks ready to go at those operations of the warehouse, et cetera. So by the time they head out the door, it just happens to be off the peak hours. So some surprising results from other studies that we've done as well. But anyway, I thought I'd pass that along.
Well, then I guess I'll take my question to Gosha. Is that a truck route right there, Wooddale Road? Is it a truck route to Irving?
Unfortunately, I don't know.
Well,
So-
I'm just thinking of something kind of really important, being that we have 2 schools right there.
I would presume that it is, but I don't have that information. So Wooddale Road is actually under the jurisdiction of DuPage County. It is not a city road.
And we can't look that up?
can do our best.
Anybody else?
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Subak.
Thank you.
Staff, is there any comments or presentation you wish to make?
Thank you. Yes, we do have a brief presentation, although a lot of it has been covered already, so we'll probably go through quickly. Just go through. So just to summarize sort of the request. So what we have in front of us is a request for a special use for a PUD, the planned unit development. It is a combined request for the concept and final plan. With that comes site plan review, which is done administratively, but we do mention it in our staff memo. And there's also, everything is sort of subject to the lot consolidation, lot subdivision, that typically does not fall under CDC purview, but it's something that City Council would approve. But really, that's one of the components of the entire project. There is also zoning variation for the size of the lot. So the location we're all very familiar with. It's located right by Elgin O'Hare Expressway and Wooddale Road. Just some of the existing conditions. Obviously, right now it is used as truck parking. It does consist of 3 parcels, and as part of the process, these will be consolidated into 1 parcel. There is a private drive along the south side of the property that is in existence. There is a recorded document that provides cross easement to the property at 940 Central, and that will remain. So really part of the redevelopment of the parcel does not impact that current access drive. In terms of zoning, the property is located in the TIO zoning district. This is one of the newer overlay districts that was created with the revision of our UDO last year. The underlying zoning is C2. However, I wanted to point out the use of the property will be sort of logistics, warehouse, and distribution. That is a permitted use in the TIO overlay district. This is just a photograph of the existing condition. Probably a lot of us are kind of familiar with the area every time you kind of drive by. The proposed conditions, we talked about a lot of these things. The building itself will be a little bit over 86,000 square feet. The idea is that to be able to divide it up to 4 tenants, each one of them would have a separate office space. There are a total of 113 parking spaces being provided. That is actually more than exceeds what the code requires at 93. There's 50 parking spaces and 5 tractor-only spaces in the back. There will be a solid screen wall on the north side. I believe it is right there. It's that one little line right there. And there's also one on the south side that are supposed to provide screening for those areas. Those are one of the conditions that city staff is recommending is for the developer to add a little bit more architectural detail or reveal to those walls, so they're not just like solid 14-foot concrete walls. The loading docks are facing the back, and we already talked about the access point. So obviously, the private drive, also known as Hanson Court, will still be utilized, but there are proposed 2 additional access, one for passenger vehicles, one for truck traffic. Both of these new curb cuts are subject to the DuPage County Division of Transportation approval, and my understanding is that the review is already undergoing. We talked about the detention, so this will be underground detention. There are 2 vaults. There's one large one, and then one smaller one over here. So I believe that covers. We talked about landscaping, being code requirements and so on. The proposed materials, you can see the samples here that the applicant brought with them. We mainly have precast concrete panels, tinted glazing, aluminum frames, but there's some emphasis added to the entrance points, which is something that is required by our code, and then some articulation added throughout the elevations, kind of in the spaces in between. Just to kind of sum up, in terms of compliance with our UDO, I mentioned the use is something that is permitted in the overlay district. The PUD is actually required because this subject property is located in the TIO zoning district. That's how that district was created, is any type of new development will have to go through a planned unit development process, which generally is a little bit more extensive in terms of what the applicant needs to prepare for their application. There is one zoning variation request. So the way the code is written, it specifically says that if the lot size cannot be met, a variation will be required. Hence, the applicant also prepared standards for approval for a zoning variation. Because generally what you may be familiar with, under a PUD, the applicant could seek deviation. So I know where the language is very particular in here. So deviations are essentially relief from the code, but it just falls under the PUD approval. There are 3 requests here. We have the parking in the front that was discussed. The staff mentioned this as a comment a number of times because this is a new zoning district. This is a new site that is being redeveloped. The staff was hoping that the parking could be relocated from the front because the TIO district specifically says that there shall be no parking between the front of the building and the front property line. There were a couple of versions and reviews of the plan, but the applicant chose to keep the parking in the front and apply for the deviation. And really number 1 and number 2 are kind of similar, but they're listed separately in our code. One of them talks about parking in the front yard. The other one talks about parking between the front of the building and the front property line. And we also have that driveway offset. You may be familiar with it. We see it in a lot of cases. It's just the fact that the proposed driveway does not align exactly or is not offset more than 150 feet on the opposing driveway. One thing I did want to mention in here is that the subject property is actually subject to a settlement agreement, and part of that settlement agreement with the city was that the developer did not need to submit a full traffic impact study. Instead, they were allowed to submit the traffic memo, which was included in your packet. Since then, we've actually received a revised document. So that is something that is under review with our engineers. We're very close. I think if I were to sum up, most of the comments have been addressed. There's just a couple of that our engineer wanted to, and obviously we'll communicate that with the applicant. But overall, our city engineer, our consultant city engineer, reviewed the traffic memo, and I would say generally they are able to provide conditional approval based on the condition. And I think one of the condition is just some of the assumption in terms of the number of trips that will be generated. It's not very far off, but I think overall they're claiming it'll be similar. So the comprehensive plan, the applicant talked really in detail about, but this project is, it's located in an area that is designated as sort of this industrial business park, and this was noted in our comprehensive plan as a site likely to experience development pressure, so we knew that eventually this is something that would be redeveloped. It obviously, based on the staff memos, hopefully you saw, there's a number of goals and objectives from the comprehensive plan that are being addressed by this development. The public comment, we only received 1 phone call. It was from the neighboring, one of the adjacent properties, I believe, but a little bit of a phone tag was a voicemail, really, but they were just more curious about what type of development was being proposed, and I never got a phone call back. So no official public comment was submitted for this petition. And then in general, I would say staff is recommending that CDC recommend approval to City Council. Sort of conditioned or based on the conditions that are listed in the staff memo. A lot of these are, I would say, sort of standard that apply to any type of developments. We want to make sure that whatever gets built there is consistent with the plans that are being approved. Obviously, final engineering will still need to be approved. I do want to mention, so for a final PUD, the applicants were required to submit engineering plans and stormwater calculations and so on, but they're not in their final state. They're ready to be presented as a PUD, I'm sorry, during the public hearing, and our engineers sort of are able to do conditional approval for the preliminary. The final always approval comes in once the permit comes in for permitting. But generally, there's only a few comments that really still are outstanding. A lot of them are just technical notes on the drawings and so on. So there has been engineering review performed for this project. We do sort of emphasize that comment in here about limiting the truck parking, so this has to be accessory to the tenants that are in there as opposed to having truck parking as a standalone primary use. And then there are a couple of specific comments I mentioned, the more detail on one of actually both of the concrete screening walls. And we also have just making one of the landscape islands a little bit wider because we feel that it may not be able to have enough green space to sustain a shade tree on the north side of the building. Essentially, that will eliminate one parking space, but as I said, there are more parking spaces provided than what the code requires, so there's some flexibility there. And I believe that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions for staff? Go ahead.
So let me see if I got this right. We're going to pass this through right now without any real idea of what is going to be built.
No.
Correct? I mean, you're telling me they can change this, they can change that, they can change that, because we don't have a actual plan yet of a building.
No, we do. That was in the past. So there's a floor plan there. So it's called a spec building because we don't know who the tenant will be.
Okay.
But what's
So
being
that's all
approved-
we're saying, that we don't know who the tenant's going to be.
Correct. Yeah, we've got, so this approval is going through a site plan approval, which means all the setbacks that are shown in here, the landscaping, everything is
stay.
correct, yeah.
So if they divide into 4 sections, that's a possibility. It's still not going to change anything on this site plan, basically.
No. It's essentially what they would do
Parking's
is
going to be the same.
do a partition wall
Water's
inside.
going to be the same. All right.
Yes, yeah. So when the building was going through our building review and also our public works, I think they actually mentioned they would prefer 4 separate water meters, separate connections, so they could potentially serve the future tenants.
Got it. And now I'm asking you, but you could probably just turn around and ask them if anybody seems to know whether that truck route going south on Irving Park Road. Anybody know?
I think you can. I think you can.
I would assume so, but I'm not sure.
Well, it's a big if for us. You know there's 2 schools right there. That's what I'm worried about, so. I mean, it doesn't, right at the moment, we don't seem to have any truck traffic there, next to none. It all seems to be heading to, and it makes sense that it would head to 390, but I just want to make sure that we're not going to have a bunch of trucks flying down that way, because it'll create a nightmare.
390 is going to take everything.
Any other questions from any other members? Okay. Does the applicant have any questions of staff?
No.
Okay. And I presume I'll make a call for public comment, but I don't see anybody in the audience here tonight, so although everybody has provided proper notice. Okay, I'm going to make a last call for...
find us that answer, I think she's trying to find that answer.
I will do my best, but I'm not sure if I'll be able to find it.
I'm going to make a last call for any further questions. Any further questions? Remember, once we close the public hearing portion, there will be no more opportunity to ask questions. So this is your last opportunity. Okay, very good. So what we need now is a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Zatko?
Yes.
Mr. Woods?
Yes.
Mr. Parenti?
Yes.
Ms. Rodnicki?
Yes.
Mr. Babowitz?
Yes.
And Chairman Ochoa.
Yes.
Okay, so the public hearing portion of the meeting is closed. This is the portion where CDC members deliberate. It's your opportunity to discuss amongst yourselves or to offer any comments or opinions on the request. Would anybody like to offer any statements or opinions?
I think it was a great presentation from Mr. Subak. I think Cliff added some good amplifying remarks to satisfy the concern from David. And thank you, Gosha, as well. I think we'll have an answer to that route before the night's over, hopefully. But I would assume so, that it's since it's a county road, that it would be a truck route. I mean, I live on Wooddale Road, and I see them go northbound to Irving Park every so often, but not as often. But I'm excited. I'm excited to see what the final product's going to look like, and I think it's going to be a great addition to our industrial area.
Any other?
It'll be a huge improvement from what we have. The parking of the trucks right now will definitely be a great improvement to have that building up there.
Yeah, I agree with everything said, and I also think that 390 is going to take a lot of traffic. I mean, right now, you know, it's closed as you go further east, but they didn't build that thing just for O'Hare Field. So I think that's going to be a major plus for that whole area over there off of Thorndale Road and in the new building, et cetera. I don't know, when is that going to open up, that whole 390 thing? About 2-3 years, I guess? Anybody know for sure?
Sure.
All right, any other statements, comments, thoughts? Okay, so what we'll do is we'll move on to a vote on the request as presented. Also, staff indicated that they had a number of conditions that they would like put on the request. The applicant has indicated that they don't have any objection to those conditions, so we'll include those conditions in the motion. Staff has proposed a motion. It's on the memo at page 22. It's lengthy, so just bear with me. I'm going to read it. At the end of my reading of the motion, any member can simply say, "So moved." Okay, here we go. Based on the submitted petition and the testimony presented, the proposed request for a special use for a planned unit development with deviations, combined concept and final development plan, variation, and site plan review upon lot consolidation for property at 895 North Wooddale Road is consistent with the Unified Development Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan, and therefore I move that the Community Development Commission adopt the findings of fact within the staff memo dated October 16th, 2023, as the findings of the Community Development Commission, and recommend to City Council approval of the special use for a planned unit development with deviations, variation, and site plan review upon lot consolidation for the property located at 895 North Wooddale Road in case number CDC 2023-0006, subject to the following conditions. Number one, the special use, plan unit development, variation, site plan review, and plat of subdivision shall substantially conform to the staff memo dated October 16, 2023, and the attached exhibits, except as such plans may be modified to meet city code requirements. Where deviations to the codes have not been requested as part of this approval, the existing codes must be met as applicable at the time of permit application. Number two, the special use permit shall be deemed to relate to and be for the benefit of the lot itself. Number three, final engineering approval. Number four, truck parking must be accessory to the existing uses / tenants on the property. Number five, more architectural detail / reveal added to the precast concrete screening walls to match the proposed elevations. Number six, one parking stall shall one parking stall be eliminated along the north facade to accommodate widening of a landscape island to accommodate a fire hydrant and a shade tree. Number 7, if the rooftop units are visible from the streets, the developer will be required to provide screening. Number 8, the developer has the ongoing obligation to maintain the landscaping on the site in accordance with the approved landscape plan. That's the motion. Anyone can say so moved.
So moved.
Right?
Who was that? I'm sorry.
I think it was Ms. Sadsko.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second. Okay, any further discussion? All right, we'll proceed to roll call. Marilyn, please.
Okay. Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Zadko?
Yes.
Mr. Woods?
Yes.
Mr. Parenti?
Yes.
Ms. Rudnicki?
Yes.
Mr. Babowis?
Yes.
And Chairman Ochoa?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes. The CDC will be recommending approval of the request as presented with the conditions to the PZB committee, and then from there to the city council. Gosha, is there a anticipated time frame for the PZB?
Yes, the anticipated date is October 26th, which is the next Thursday, not this one, following week.
Okay, great. So that concludes tonight's matters, and I will cede the floor back to the chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Conway. We'll move on. Staff liaison report.
We don't have anything to report.
Thank you. With that, we need a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, there being a motion and a second, all in favor signify by saying yes.
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 All those opposed signify by stating no. The motion carries. This meeting's adjourned.